is Jann Newton of Newton Custom Interiors, and today I'm going to talk to you about my 10 favorite sewing notions. I've got a lot of favorite tools and notions that help me in my drapery business, but I've narrowed it down to 10 that I think are my favorite and probably the most helpful with my sewing projects. The first sewing notion that I'm going to talk to you about are my glass head pins that I like to use. They are 1 7/8 inch long, so they're a lot longer than normal sewing or quilting pins. And the head is bigger also than on regular pins. The glass is nice for the head because then it won't melt if the iron touches it. And it just makes my job a lot easier when I'm sewing through several layers, such as this pillow that has a front and a back side, and then 2 layers of cording to pin. And it just makes it a lot easier to pin. It's easier to grab the large head and pull them out when I need to pull them out. So these are probably one of the most useful things that I've got in my sewing studio. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about as far as sewing notions goes is my metal magnetic pin bowl. And it's not intended as a pin bowl, but it's really used by auto mechanics when they're working on the underside of a car. They can put this bowl and put it on the car, and it holds it with the magnet, and then they put their nuts and bolts and things inside the bowl. But it works very good for pins. They're a lot less likely to fall out. If this gets knocked off the table, it will spill a few pins, but nothing like if it was in a regular carrying case. One of my readers mentioned that she was going to try using one of these magnetic pin bowls on her ironing board, and I thought that was a great idea. It would hold on to the ironing board really well. My next favorite sewing notion or tool are these John James long darners, number 7s. They are very long. They are about 2 1/4 inches long, and they're fairly thick and sturdy. They won't break as easily as a regular needle. I've got a regular needle here so you can see the difference in size. They have a large head that makes it easy to thread the needle, and I just really like these for hand sewing. I love this leather thimble that's made by Clover. It's very soft and really comfortable on your finger. Then it has a metal coin, I guess you'd call it, that helps when you're trying to, hand sew and push a needle through a lot of fabric. It's much more comfortable for me than the old metal thimbles are. So one of my favorite sewing tools definitely is this leather thimble. These are my Sew Grip gloves that I love to use when I'm gathering or trying to pull threads or strings. They have rubber tips, and just 3 fingers, the thumb and the 2 fingers, are used with them. But they really are helpful when you're trying to hold on to some strings. The rubber really helps you grip. So you just use it to pull on the strings. And it helps also, the strings aren't cutting into your finger as much either. You can use them for needlework or embroidery, all kinds of different things, craft projects where you want some extra grip. Our next sewing notion are these thermal thimbles that go on your thumb and your first two fingers on your hand, your non-dominant hand. They're made out of rubber and they have these bumps on them that help grip the fabric. But their main purpose is to help protect your fingers from the heat and steam of an iron. Your iron, a lot of your heat and steam comes from the front of the iron, and if you're doing really close ironing, these really help protect your fingers from the heat and the steam. I really love them. So again, these are called thermal thimbles, and they're made by Dritz. As much as I dislike it, sometimes I need to take some of my sewing stitches out if I've made a mistake on my sewing, and which every sewer does. And to take my stitches out, or as I like to call reverse sewing, I use a seam ripper. And I've got two that I like to use. This blue one is made by Dritz, and it's probably my favorite of the two because it is larger and easier for me to hold on to. Both come with a protective cover for the sharp point that we have on the seam ripper, and each of them also has the red ball on the short part of the seam ripper, and the purpose for that is to help you not cut into the fabric when you're ripping out your stitches. So what I like to do is I like to use it first with the ball up just to kind of get going with my seam, and then I'll turn the seam ripper over so that the red ball is on the bottom of the fabric, and then you just simply move across your seam. And again, this helps protect your fabric from being cut by the seam ripper. So as much as I don't like to use them, these are very helpful tools in my sewing studio. The smaller one, I should have said, is made by Clover, and it's really good too, but again, it's just a smaller size. This strange looking object is another sewing notion that I really love to have in my sewing studio. It's called That Purple Thang, Thang, and it's very helpful for pushing out corners or seams when you're turning something right side out. For instance, if I have a pillow corner and I want to make sure that this corner is nice and poked out and not rounded like it is now, I'll just stick the end of that purple thang in there and push it out gently so that I've got a nice crisp corner. So again, it's called That Purple Thang. This is my Omni Grip grid measuring tool, and I really love to use it when I'm making a project that needs some small cuts, like cording or banding. This one is 6 inches by 24 inches long, and I love that it's clear and that you can just lay the grid on the edge of the fabric. Say I want to do a 2-inch piece of banding or a strip of fabric. I would just simply lay the Omni grid on the edge of the fabric on my 2-inch mark, and then mark the fabric with my marker. quilters love to use these because they're cutting out a lot of small pieces of fabric. So they're very useful. Another thing that I love about these Omni grids is that they have angled marks for you also. They have 30-degree angles, 45 degrees, and 60 degrees. The one that I use most often is a 45-degree angle for mitered corners and things like that. So to do a 45-degree angle, I would simply place the grid on the edge of my fabric on this 45-degree line and then make my mark on the fabric. So it's very fast and easy to use, and I use it in so many different ways in my sewing studio. The last sewing notion or tool that I wanted to talk to you about is my 18-inch metal straight edge. So it's basically a metal ruler, and it's 18 inches instead of 12 inches. And I love that it's marked in 1/8 inch increments and also 1/16 inch increments. I use this a lot when I'm marking pleats for draperies or valances. I like to measure the length of my valances or cornices when they're done, and so this is very easy to use for that too. I use it in a lot of different ways actually. So this one again is made by Johnson, and it's an 18-inch metal straight edge.